New gender equality rules come into effect in Taiwan. We look at how far the country has come on women's rights.
我们要演练科目变多了，要探讨的课题多了。
Taiwan's defense minister announces new steps to bolster the country's defenses against China. Taiwanese lawmakers raise concerns over disinformation on TikTok. Plus,
on International Women's Day, we take a look at how Taiwanese women help make the Barbie doll a global success.
a warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Chen. An international alliance of lawmakers is sounding the alarm over a possible conflict in the Taiwan Strait. The Interparliamentary Alliance on China, made up of dozens of politicians from all over the world, says more attention needs to be paid to China's aggression towards Taiwan. The group has launched a new project to raise awareness of the issue. It says that any conflict in the Taiwan Strait would have dire consequences for the entire world.
A blockade of the Taiwan Strait could cost the global economy $10 trillion or even more.
And that's more than the economic slowdown caused by the COVID-19.
5 times more than Putin's illegal war in Ukraine.
This is unthinkable. It's something we can't allow.
And it is a very real risk.
More must be done to prevent this.
To find out more about what the Interparliamentary Alliance is calling for, our reporter Rick Glauert spoke to Alliance member and lawmaker for the Netherlands Democrats 66 Party, Jan Peternoot.
So you're part of a new call for more attention to be paid to what is happening in the Taiwan Strait. Could you tell me exactly what is at stake here?
I think what is at stake is a rules-based global order. And that's an order for me as a citizen in a small country. We've seen after the Second World War that small countries can prosper, that they can rely on the fact that there is an order in the world where it's not just big countries bullying smaller countries into submission, but that human rights matter, that sovereignty matters, and that the size of your army does not mean that you can always bully the neighboring countries around you. That rules-based global order would really come to an end if we've seen the Russians invading Ukraine, a sovereign country, and then China invading Taiwan and taking over that country. So if you really value human rights and democracy and a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, then you should take an interest in what's happening in the Taiwan Strait.
Your campaign calls for people to pay more attention to measuring the impact of Chinese aggression towards Taiwan. What should people be looking out for?
What we need to look out for is what is happening in the Taiwan Strait. And at the moment, we see some news reports that Chinese spy balloons fly over Taiwan, that Chinese airplanes, that they cross the middle line between the Chinese mainland and Taiwan. And those are just incidents, of course, but they add up to a pattern in which China is putting ever more pressure on Taiwan, which could, in the end up in a blockade or an invasion. And what we need to do is monitor how the situation develops and make sure that the world pays attention, because it's very important for welfare, prosperity on a global scale that we do deter China from putting any aggressive pressure on Taiwan, invading or blockading the country.
We know that China, the world's second largest economy with a lot of clout, often puts pressure on people to accept its narrative when it comes to Taiwan. As a lawmaker in Europe, how hard is it for you to convince people to care about Taiwan's situation?
I think people are becoming more aware of the fact that China is not just a trade partner, but is also a country that is willing to put pressure on anyone, everywhere, whenever it suits their short-term interests. And I think the lesson that we learned from the Russian invasion in Ukraine is that you need to give a dictatorship a very good reason not to act aggressively. This is something where Europe, but also the United States, have failed. If we would have put a very clear sanctions package on the table, if we would have given Russia a very good reason not to attack Ukraine, then we might have prevented the total war that's currently going on. And this is a lesson, I think, that we need to apply to the situation in the Taiwan Strait and to China's pressure on Taiwan.
That was reporter Rick Glauert speaking to Dutch parliamentarian Jan Peternoot about a new campaign by the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. Amendments to Taiwan's gender equality laws come into effect on Friday. The legislative changes coincide with International Women's Day. Joyce Deng joins us live in Taipei with the details. Joyce, what exactly are these new measures?
Considerable progress here for gender equality in Taiwan. Amendments have come into effect that will better help protect people who've experienced sexual harassment. And as you said, Betty, it's no coincidence that it's happening today on International Women's Day. The country has been thinking hard about women's rights here, especially as a string of Me Too cases cropped up last year, some of which involved some pretty high-profile politicians and celebrities. Now, changes to these laws are hoping to protect all people who've experienced sexual harassment, not just women. And one area of focus is the workplace. Data from activist groups show that almost half of all harassment cases happen at work. Now, in the past, many of Taiwan's companies were too small, actually, to be legally required to have things like anti-harassment reporting lines or punishment protocols. And so the law now mandates that companies with as few as 10 people will have to do so, compared to the previous 30. And so the hope here is that more people will be protected under these amendments.
There have been some wins for gender equality in Taiwan under President Tsai Ing-wen. She's the country's first female president, and she's worked hard to advance female empowerment. And now she's reaching her term limit soon. Will this momentum continue, Joyce?
Well, it does look quite promising. President Tsai will be handing off the baton to her right-hand man, Lai Ching-te, who is currently her vice president. Now, Lai has previously said that he will look to largely follow in Tsai's footsteps. Now, today, Lai posted on social media for International Women's Day, where he also acknowledged, though, that there's more to do to empower women in Taiwan. Now, if we look at some other aspects, say the pay gap, for example, some numbers from the Labor Ministry show that women here on average have to work about 54 more days than men to make the same amount of money doing the same job. And so, of course, the amendments today are important to better protect people experiencing sexual harassment, but there's certainly more to do to reach gender equality in Taiwan.
And we'll be seeing more of what gender equality under Lai Ching-te will look like after he's inaugurated in May. Thank you, Joyce. That was Joyce Deng reporting live from Taipei. Also on International Women's Day, we take a look at how female migrant workers facing a tough life in Taiwan dream of a better future for their children back home. Tiffany Wong has more.
Holding herself together, Francia Valderrama has been living as a migrant worker in Taiwan for 11 years. It's been tough on her body as she's toiled through jobs as a domestic caretaker and most recently as a factory worker. Her purpose? Supporting her 2 children in the Philippines.
I'm lucky to have my 2 children because they are not so like the other children that make the headache. They are actually my 2 children is the one who helping me to be more strong.
And she's needed to stay strong. Valderrama suffered abuse at the hands of a previous employer, and now she's suffering physical difficulties that have led to the need for surgery. All this has also taken a mental toll on her.
I got suicidal in my work because whatever I do, my energies cannot come back anymore. I got lost in my energy. I don't know where I'm going to hate because at the time I want only to earn. I don't want to be a burden to my family because I have 2 kids.
But there are many other women in Valderrama's position. One study from a labor rights group found that 1 in 6 female migrant workers in Taiwan have experienced gender-based violence, with 90% of the incidents occurring in domestic care settings. Domestic workers, the majority of whom are women, are not covered under Taiwan's Labor Standards Act, which means requesting medical treatment or taking time off can put their jobs at risk.
Most of the employers and companies and brokers, they don't allow their women migrants to stay here to give birth, or not even being pregnant.
In 2019, the government created a hotline for migrant workers to report abuses and seek legal counseling. But advocates say many cases go unreported. Some say the government needs to do more to recognize the contributions of migrant workers and protect them and their jobs.
it is the migrant workers who toils in the factory. It is the migrant workers who care for the elderlies and their wards so that they can like have their own careers. So basically, it's the migrant workers who runs somehow the economy of Taiwan.
Thousands of migrant workers in Taiwan have made sacrifices to provide for their families. And women like Valderrama say they'll continue to fight for the rights of other migrants like themselves, who put themselves at risk far from home just for the chance to provide a better life for their children. Chris Ma and Tiffany Wong in New Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Migrant workers in Taiwan are calling for an end to the broker system of recruitment through direct government-to-government negotiations.
We negotiate with employers to improve our working conditions. They choose to hire someone else. When our home countries request the Taiwan government to protect our rights, Taiwan government choose to bring in migrant workers from the other countries.
It comes after Taiwan agreed on a deal to import more migrant labor from India. Activists say they hope it can be an opportunity for the government to review the current system, where intermediaries known as brokers recruit and assign migrant workers. But examples of abuse by brokers, including high fees and unfair treatment, have sparked calls for change. Activists say direct recruitment between governments will help improve conditions. Taiwan's military has announced multiple new steps to boost the country's defense and counter an increasingly aggressive China. It's the latest sign of rising cross-strait tensions that the country's defense minister admits to feeling nervous about. Jeremy Olivier has this report.
Always on alert and losing sleep. That's how Taiwan's defense minister Chiu Kuo-zeng says he's feeling about his country's fraught relationship with China. Chiu was reporting to the legislature on the increasing danger in the Taiwan Strait. That includes the waters around the outlying Jinmen Islands, after a recent incident involving Taiwan's Coast Guard that left 2 Chinese fishers dead. It also comes as China wraps up the latest annual session of its rubber stamp Congress. At that meeting, Beijing raised its defense budget by over 7%. With China intensifying its military buildup, Chiu addressed concerns about a backlog in U.S. weapons sales to Taiwan.
目前进展的，我讲真话都还算蛮顺利的。国军第一个把握原则就绝对不去做一个军备的竞争，我们也没有这个必要。但我们要强化我们自己，不管训练各方面，这是我们唯一的能够做的方法。
The minister also announced an extension of computerized war games during the annual Hanguang exercise, Taiwan's largest military drills. These will be extended from 5 days to 8.
考量敌情变化了，我们当然要做一个应对。我们要演练科目变多了，要探讨的课题多了，时间5天时也不足，可能要更加详尽、更加缜密，所以把时间延长。
Perhaps most significantly, Taiwan is changing its requirements for a first strike. This refers to when the military would fire the first shot at an enemy combatant. Before, the red line was artillery or bullets fired by the Chinese military. New rules of engagement say any warplane that crosses into Taiwan's airspace may be fired upon. The military says it must prepare for war, but it's not actively seeking conflict. But as both sides continue to ramp up defense spending, and with no end to the current tensions in sight, the worst-case scenario will continue to keep some awake at night. Andy Xue and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Lawmakers in Taiwan are raising concerns over security risks posed by the short video platform TikTok.
在抖音上面大肆流传说什么做票的这个假讯息很严重的儿少色情。
它不是普通的广告平台，它现在也被我们界定成危害产品，就是境外敌对势力可能可以实质控制的这个产品。
The comments in the legislature come after a U.S. congressional committee passed a bill that could effectively ban the app. TikTok has been accused of spreading disinformation ahead of Taiwan's recent election, despite some candidates embracing it during their campaigns. For more on the debate around TikTok, reporter Chris Gorin spoke with the president of the Taiwan Law and Technology Association, Yachi Chang.
What's the difference between the PRC app Douyin and the international version called TikTok? And which one are most people in Taiwan using?
TikTok is the international version of Douyin. So there are actually different apps. And for the Taiwan users, I I think naturally, legally they will download the TikTok version, but they can also use some tricks to circumvent the restrictions of the location rules and to download the Douyin version if they like. There might be some differences about the content moderation rules because for the PRC version, the content moderation rules will be more stricter than the international version. Supposedly, I'm not. I haven't done any research in the practice, but that's according to the TikTok. They actually follow the rules and the legislations in the countries overseas. So supposedly they will have more freedom in terms of the content expression.
What is it exactly about TikTok that makes it more concerning than other social media platforms or apps?
Maybe some people will argue that there are also other disinformation examples on other platforms. Why we focus on TikTok? Because first of all, the algorithm is not transparent. And secondly, it has a very close connection with its parent company, ByteDance, which is located in China, which is the company will be subject to all the legislations, all the requests from the CCP. So that is very worrying. And thirdly, apart from the misinformation cases, we also learned that the content moderation rules are not very transparent in the TikTok.
Is it fair to say then that the concerns are based more on the potential privacy and disinformation concerns that TikTok could pose rather than demonstrated examples that show it's more risky?
Yeah, maybe we can say that there's no concrete evidence yet to prove that.
What's the flip side of this coin? What risks are posed by having a ban on TikTok?
The first problem we will face is the freedom of speech, the most respected legal doctrine in a democratic system. We are actually face a very imbalanced war. The authoritarian countries can use our freedom of speech to penetrate our democratic systems.
That was Jiaqi Chang speaking to our reporter, Chris Gorin. Coming up, record-setting temperatures are starting to show their effects on the environment.
过人生的话，你发现说，我们大部分都是爱美的。
我自己少遇见一朵花，我可能就不是这个样子。
开始思考什么叫做一个本土性。
大声的唱出来说我是台湾人。
At a time when the world feels more divided, a platform for diverse voices to come together. I'm Divi Gopalan. Join the dots. Be part of the conversation. Connected where opinions matter.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The U.S. military will establish a temporary pier on the coast of Gaza to facilitate aid deliveries to the war-torn enclave as it's facing acute food shortages. U.S. President Joe Biden announced the emergency plan during his State of the Union speech, adding it will not involve putting U.S. troops on the ground. The dock in the Mediterranean will be able to receive large shipments of food, water, medicine, and shelter, but the timeline for construction is unknown. It comes as the Biden administration faces increasing pushback for its support of Israel's war on Hamas. Biden used the State of the Union to reiterate Israel's right to defend itself, but also said he will continue to push for a ceasefire deal and said that a two-state solution is the only way to guarantee future security and stability in the region. U.S. President Joe Biden has called for peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and taken aim at China's unfair trade practices in his third State of the Union address in Washington, D.C.
I've made sure that the most advanced American technologies can't be used in China, not allowing to trade them there. Frankly, for all this tough talk on China, it never occurred to my predecessor to do any of that. I want competition with China, not conflict.
At home, the president emphasized the need for protection of reproductive rights, vowed to increase resources for border security, to tackle gun violence, and to harness the power of AI. On international issues, Democrat Biden pushed for more support for Ukraine in its war with Russia, something that is opposed by many Republican members of Congress. February was the 9th consecutive month to break climate records. Harrell Hughes tells us the latest.
Only grass for this polar bear. Ice is disappearing from the Arctic. And as ocean surface temperatures hit record highs, it is only expected to get worse.
Arctic sea ice is kind of the first part of the climate system where we could unequivocally detect influence of anthropogenic warming because we got outside any kind of background variability. It was very clearly that it was driven by increasing temperatures.
Climate record after climate record was shattered over the last year. Greenhouse gas emissions hit their highest level of concentration on record. July 2023 was the hottest month ever recorded. Antarctic sea ice hit a record low. And now sea surface temperatures are at their hottest in recorded history. The hotter ocean temperatures will have cascading effects on the environment. Coral reefs are home to 1/3 of all marine species. And marine scientists are warning of a 4th mass coral bleaching event, which will collapse the fragile marine ecosystems. Scientists expected this year to be warmer because of El Niño, the cyclical weather pattern that affects global temperatures. But they didn't expect it to be this hot.
Every month since June 2023 has set a new monthly temperature record, and 2023 was by far the hottest year on record. El Niño has contributed to these temperatures, but heat-trapping greenhouse gases are unequivocally the main culprit.
The warnings from researchers are consistent. February 2024 was the hottest February ever recorded, and the 9th consecutive month to hit that milestone. As the planet warms and the ice shrinks, we are only beginning to see the impacts. Howard Jung and Harrell Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Australia's Great Barrier Reef is suffering from a major bleaching event caused by climate change. Bleaching happens when heat forces coral to shed the colorful algae that lives in its tissue, turning them white. Coral can survive a bleaching event, but will struggle if ocean temperatures continue to stay high. Experts say this year's bleaching is more widespread than other recent cases, and they're assessing the damage. The reef contributes about $4 billion to Australia's economy every year. For decades, children around the world have played with Barbie dolls, but Taiwanese women were once behind the brand's success. Our reporter Cindy Chi brings us the story.
Barbie, a sexist doll or feminist icon. However you look at it, toy maker Mattel's taken the world by storm since 1959, and its plastic dolls remain some of the world's most popular toys. But behind the scenes, Taiwan played an important role in the brand's success. Here in Taishan, a small town in the country's north, the Meining factory was once a major manufacturing base, producing most of the Barbie dolls in the world. Retired factory worker Xu Julian was part of it.
我在这边服务了6年，待过缝纫部跟福利社。
Xu joined the doll manufacturing plant at the age of 17. And in the 1970s, she and about 8,000 other workers made about 80% of the world's Barbie dolls.
你看一天多少几千位员工在生产，每天在做，能够销到全世界。像我们一个玩具可能玩个几年嘛，对不对？可是天天生产呢，你还可以销售出去，那也真的不简单呢。
And most of the staff there were young women.
大部分都是女性，那么每一个女孩子都是非常勤劳、非常漂亮。那这个工厂每当下班的时候，整个马路都是美女一大堆，因为它男性比较少。
Taishan was an ideal location for Mattel to make the dolls. as it was an important hub for petrochemical and textile industries in Taiwan. Government incentives also helped, providing cheap labor. Though the factory produced most of the Barbies in the world, they were all sold overseas. It was only until 1982 did they sell it domestically here in Taiwan, and it is this Barbie here in my hand. Back then, one Barbie cost over $30, which was about a month's worth of wages here at the factory. Staff who could not afford to buy the dolls would sometimes take parts of them home, putting them together themselves later.
只要是女生都会喜欢它吧，只是碍于当时的经济呀，销售状况听说是还不错啦，因为有能力买的人买嘛，像我们这些就可能会考虑啦。
But the industrial boom didn't last forever. The factory closed in 1987 due to rising labor costs. But some workers there have continued to work with Barbie. Xu is a volunteer at Taisan's Barbie Museum, which was set up in 2004. It's a place for people like Xu to share their stories about the iconic doll, in hopes that more people will remember how this small town once played a significant role in Barbie's success. Come as Xu and Sanny Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today, check out these images of the Art Dubai event showcasing digital, AI, and contemporary art. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.